see the red dot. Go
Yeah,
for
I
it.
see it. I see it. Okay,
Cool.
sorry. Yeah, should it go again or?
If you wouldn't mind, that would be
Yeah, I don't
appreciated.
mind. Okay. Hi, I'm Owen. Yeah, my early career where I broke my spine when I was about 20, two prolapsed discs in the back, crushing the sciatic nerve, pain down my leg, constant pain for the rest of my life. That's what the doctors said. But instead of allowing that to sort of take hold and you know, making it so that it was you'd stop me in my career path, I decided to continue working and push through it because I just really like software. I'm quite passionate about it, and I don't like to give up easily. That's the main thing. So yeah, that's the kind of person I am anyway. Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
brilliant.
And you're going to be talking about why writing tests is valuable and the benefits of good CI/CD practices.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. Go for it.
Oh, real. Hey, sorry, I didn't know whether you were introducing everyone else on the call.
No, so yeah, you're our only speaker
Format.
tonight. So
Brilliant. Ace, wonderful. Well, okay. Yeah, so I've worked at a couple of companies when I was younger, about 9 years ago. About 10 years I've been programming now. Um, and when I started, a lot of these companies were quite small companies, but not as small as the one we're currently working at Playrole. And many of them had different approaches to solving problems. But every single one of them had one thing in common, and that was that none of them wrote tests, and every single one of them had problems in production. And those problems in production were caused as a result of having no tests. And the proof's in the pudding because I started my career out as a tester because no one would hire me as a dev. I didn't have the experience. And every time I tried to apply for the role, they'd go, "You're a bit green. You don't really know what you're talking about." So it was gutting. It was actually heart wrenching when you hear that sort of stuff sort of come in. But eventually, I accepted a job as a we call it system analyst programmer or something like that. And I was programming for mathematicians in a gambling company, compliance. And during that time, I got so bored of the role that I found a way to sort of automate my job because it's the same thing in out every day. And what do you do as a developer? You don't like doing things that are the same every single day. You automate it. You do something that's different. So I found a book on the shelf, which they had in there, and they had a book on Bash. And I read about shell scripting and how I could use that to sort of manipulate the time I had. And I knew that if I wrote a decent Bash script, I could have it so that it would run a cron job that would do my entire work for me throughout the entire day because it was the same thing that we do every single day. And I had the scripts basically moving things in the folders and going into these different folders and filling in data and sending them off to different areas. It was great. I mean, well, it was great until they fired me. Well, that was because I told them about it. So there is that. I was there and I lasted a while because I managed to learn how to be a dev while I was there. I learned how to script myself, and I never did a pure computer science degree for one, so that's where it was a bit of a letdown because I didn't know networking, I didn't know all these different things. But it turns out I know how to learn, which is really good. What unit testing framework you use for Bash scripts? Well, that's the thing with Bash. I never really did use a lot of unit testing frameworks because it's a scripting language, and I guess you can apply testing to the majority of things. The only way this was just early on in my career. You see, Bash is kind of like a language that you use as sort of to engineer infrastructure together. So the only real way to test it is to run it to a degree. It's not like a heavyweight, heavy-duty JavaScript based language, which has got backing and it's got the 2 dimensions and everything. Yeah, Fiverr are doing a great job. Not cool. Yeah, but don't worry. The next employer thought that was a really great thing to do. That they fight. Well, they thought it was really great that I got fired for it because they wanted me to do it for them. They weren't going to fire me, but they were going to make sure they fired a load of people in accounting, which wasn't very nice at all, to be honest with you, because yeah, they had me automate them out. But and the worst part was the CEO. The walls were glass, so you could see through the walls into the other rooms, and he literally just you could see the entire accounting team, and he said to them, face the wall, right, because I don't want to see any of your faces, right, because you could hear him through the walls because he was so loud, right, and then he went, we don't need any of you all. HR will escort you out the back of the building. I thought, what a bastard. Sorry, excuse me. I just thought this guy is evil, right? And I've just done something that's so wrong. Why did we have to get rid of them? Why couldn't we have upskilled them into another area? Because at the end of the day, right, everything, the whole point of automation isn't to replace people. It's to enable people to do other things. And that's the thing that I was sort of aiming towards. And I didn't like the company I was working for because this guy, he was, and he shook, he wanted to shake my hand after he'd done it. And I was like, no, I'm not shaking your hand. I don't agree with this. I think I'm going to work for somebody else. I just, and yeah, so the actual lecture itself today, a lot of these companies have the one thing in common, automation, and to enable people to do other things. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Enable people to do other things. That's the aim. It's not supposed to replace people. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, someone asked earlier about automation what testing framework would I use? What kind of tests do I think are really valuable? Well, I guess my favorite sort of test to write, and it's mainly because I've been writing them for a while now, is E2E ones, end-to-end visual regression packs. So these are tests that sit on the top level, and they basically run through your application as if you were a user. They mimic the clicks, the text, the typing, the scrolling, anything a user can do, this can do. And it's brilliant because from a QA perspective, everything's bureaucratic. If I said to somebody, I've got a ticket, and I don't know, it changes the node version to another node version. But I wanted to make sure that everything that I've built actually works and that we've scaled up and it works. Because the thing about changing node versions is there's nuances behind the sort of the new syntactical sugar that they've brought out. And so you don't know what you're breaking. You can break anything in there from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. So automated tests give you the ability to sort of test more manually, because manual testers are employed a lot to just go through the app and say, log in. Well, I don't know if you guys know what we do at Payroll or how it works. I'm quite new here myself, but let's say you do. They do a lot of payroll and HR. So you log in and you do employee onboarding or something and go through this entire journey through the app in the goal of saying, we actually reached the end and we didn't find any problems. Therefore, it works. That's great. But they're time consuming. They take forever to write. Explain what the company does. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So Payroll, they're they describe themselves as a boardless HR company. What that means is they enable people from all around the world to be employed anywhere. And they do it through this concept of an employer of record, or they have these things called providers that effectively help them work out the tax and all the payroll that they need to pay people. It's mostly, they're mostly working with employees, PAYE people, but they also do contractors as well. Because I used to be a contractor at one point in my life. That was a lot of money back then. But being a contractor and being permanent was a lot different, because as a contractor, they'd be like, yeah, we're contracting you out on a day rate of this, so we expect you to work 24 hours. And I'm like, no, I'm going to work 8 or 12. So payroll. Yeah, so they help people with their payroll, so how much to pay them, how much to tax them, all this. But with contractors, they manage their own tax, so there isn't really much for them to do other than to go through the service. And I guess the only thing that's really concerning is the whole outside IR35 rule in the UK. I don't know if it's everywhere else, but basically the classification of whether you are actually a contractor or you're using it as a tax haven. So things like, if you're a contractor, you're not employed as Owen Carter, you're employed as business A, right, is contracted out to work for business B. Things like you don't take holiday, you don't get sick pay, all these things. We can fire you in 5 seconds. It's the best thing in the world because they pay you really well for it. And the truth is, even if you're in a permanent capacity, they'll fire you anyway in the same way, but you get paid less. Well, the contracting market went through the floor. Anyway, aside from that, automation, danger pay, exactly. That's why you get paid contingency effectively. So don't spend it all on sweets, because So with Playroll, they've got me automating their applications. Effectively, don't spend it all on sweets. They got me automating all their applications, and it's manic because there's so much to test, and I've got to a point now where, in order to write the tests with perfection, to articulate them right, it would be it's definitely oh wow, he sounds like a great guy. So like it would be very difficult to automate the whole of the payroll system that they've got here, every single aspect of it, because it's so big, and they built this massive monster of an app in 2 years with I don't want to say no tests, but no tests, in my opinion. I mean, I know I'm going to get crapped on for that, but valuable tests. But the point is, we're still releasing content, and as far to my knowledge, because no one tells me, we haven't had any problems with releases. It's so rated. They show errors in your code. No test, no errors. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, there you go. Well, actually, technically, you do get errors in the compiler or in the interpreter, depending on the language you're using. But you can always hide them though in the console. But why are tests good? What do they really accomplish? Well, these end-to-end tests, they sort of allow us to free up our manual testers so that we can. Every time a developer writes a line of code, there's always a risk that comes with it, right? No matter where they're writing it, because well, I don't know if you guys use see, I write code in Node, and I also do a bit of dev code from time to time here at Playroll as well. So they do a lot of things in React, which is one of the more modern frameworks they've got, like in the MVC world, model view control. But you got things like Angular that work in a similar fashion, where it's everything's kind of somewhat event-driven, but front-endy kind of world. And when you're testing those kinds of applications, they have the capacity to use templates. So instead of building the same bit of HTML and saying, this is the login screen. Oh no, bad example. This is the user profile screen, which exists on 6 other screens, right? Instead of building that out 6 times, they use the same template but pass in different information into it. And because they're using that same template, you would argue that there's less risk, and to a degree there is. But at the same time, that's also 6 places to test. That we need to make sure that it works properly. And because in all those 6 places, even though this one is a template, they're changing the inputs effectively. It does. There is value to it. But Kenneth C. Dodds, he kind of disagrees with the whole end-to-end world, or at least he has recently. But he's kind of come off the map. Kenneth C. Dodds is a member of ThoughtWorks. He's a tool. Yeah, I thought you would say that. I mean, I personally like him. I think he's an all right dude. Well, yeah, many people are going up kind of against him because he He's more about writing integration tests, the whole concept of like mocking your services out and making sure that the infrastructure is not included. Yeah, they save you from embarrassing bugs in prod. Yeah, there's an element of integrations can be quicker, but they can also be slower depending on the type of test that you're writing. It's a trade-off, really. Do I write an integration test? Do I write an end-to-end test? Do I write a unit test? All depends on the circumstance. So, like, if I'm logging into the app, is it better to just write an integration test to say, well, actually, when I type in this field, text will appear, or when I press this button, the page will reload and go into there. Yeah, I mean, mocking's great because it tests exactly like that person said. It tests your code works, but all the third parties that you're consuming, you don't want to be testing their code too much. You're not hitting it. But at the same time, I kind of believe there's two ways. I kind of believe that you need to go the testing pyramid and do a bit of everything. You know, that you have a bit of integration test that's mocking out things. You have a bit of end-to-end that hits those real services, because in the real world, anything can happen. I mean, for all we know, something might be down, something might be up. The infrastructure, the servers, the database, anything could go wrong. But if you're mocking, you live in a safe world. Everything is predetermined, mitigated. It's you're always going to get the same result, which is good. And unit tests, yeah, they're quick tests to write, and generally you can get your coverage metrics quite up. Because this is the thing, I had this argument with my last boss. Okay, when it comes to coverage, testing coverage, everyone's got like an opinion on how much coverage you should have. I think one of the big ones for me is, I always say this, but my current boss doesn't necessarily agree with me on this, and that is, if you're in a hospital and you were building something to manage someone's heart, right? How much coverage do you think you need to have effectively to open that to the floor? You know, you'd probably not want a human to die, so you'd probably want to go for something like 96% coverage in unit test world. Did they pay their bill? Yeah. Did they pay their taxes? That is a very good question, but also not quite relevant. But nonetheless, because it's paid. Yeah. Did they do it all? Did the dialysis machine actually pump the blood through the person's body and clean it of anything that's wrong with the kidneys? So in that world, it makes sense to be really, I'm going to use this word, I'm going to use it very gently, but OCD about it. Yes, exactly. We need this many tests. We need this. We need that. We need this level of coverage. We can't release unless we've got all this in place. Whereas if you're building a payroll app, the argument here is, what's the problem if something goes wrong? What's the risk? What's the issue? What is really going to happen if payroll doesn't work? Right? People don't get paid. Okay. People get pissed off about that, but can they survive? Yeah. I mean, it depends on which area of the app you're talking about. Because if it's payroll, the core payroll, I'd argue that it's still quite important. So my argument was always like, well, if you work in these kinds of sectors, it's probably at least 70%, but you probably want to aim for it close to 85% test coverage, at least in the unit world. Because I think you can go a bit too far with unit tests. Because you can sit there and go, oh, I want to get 100% coverage. But in order to do it, I've got to I've got to sort of hack it in. If you get me, you kind of writing the unit test and you kind of trying to bump this figure up. But what are you actually achieving? You're not really achieving that at all, to be honest. You just sort of, you're trying to push a number up, but you're not delivering value. And that's what testing is all about, is delivering value and good CI/CD practices. Microsoft did a study on two teams. One team they paid to do the exact same project, and the other team to do the exact same project, right? And one wrote tests, and the other one didn't, right? And the one that didn't delivered first, but it added crap ton of bugs in it. And the one that wrote tests first in TDD style, test-driven development, where you write the test, then you write the code, they actually produced a better app, and they didn't have many bugs at all, really. And they were able to just develop forward better. When they examined the code between the two, the two different apps they built, the one that had tests was better refactored. They because they took more time, and when they delivered high quality, whereas this team didn't, and they had the money to be able to blow to do the study, right? So it was quite an interesting study. I mean, I definitely have to send you a link to that for you to believe me. I'm not in I'm not in the business of selling you a lie, but it was a good study, and I will send a link at the end on that one. Yeah, exactly. Slap together some dodgy code. I mean, the reality is, the other thing about TDD is I wouldn't recommend it for every developer. I mean, yeah, yeah, TDD is good. I mean, it gives you that sort of positive mental attitude because when you write a test, you just make it pass, minimal amount of code. Yeah, exactly. It can take more time to write. Yeah, and it's not a religion. Exactly. You don't have to do it. But if you write tests in general, that's good enough for me, really. You know, however you work best is better. It's better not to force every developer to go through a same crucible because they're not going to perform as well. Exactly. Good middle ground. Because you don't want everyone should be allowed to use whatever IDE they want. You don't, if everyone's using JetBrains, for example, well, actually, they're probably quite happy using JetBrains because it's so expensive. But yeah, I personally, yeah, okay, that's an all right thing to do. But I like VS Code. I like the lightweight ones. That is religion. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Um, some people love big heavyweight IDEs like that. But my personal opinion is that they kind of take away the whole think for yourself part because they're like, oh, do this refactor for me, and it's like, okay, oh, do this source control thing for me. But do you understand the underpinning thing that it's doing? Uh, good joke, good joke. It does start quickly. Oh, well, at least you're not using VI. You might never get out of that text editor. Uh, so that's a bad dev joke. Yeah, so I mean, I think sometimes that a lot of a lot of the testing that we're doing, a lot of a lot of the editors we're using because we feel comfortable with them. But when I asked half the people who had IDEs how to write, how Git works, they go, "Oh well, I do this thing, and it just does it." And I'd sit there and go, "And you're a developer? You're a developer?" And I went, and they go, "Yeah." And I'd say, "Don't you want to know how it fundamentally works?" No. I'm like, then you're not a developer then, because a developer would seek underlying knowledge, would be so curious to know what's actually happening, because that's the difference between a really good developer and a shit one, right? And I'm not afraid to say that. Well, understanding the tools you're using is so important. It's one of them. It's like I had a developer in my last one. I had to sort of teach him how to use Git because he'd be like, oh, I can't use it without source tree. I'd be like, well, you use source tree if you want to use source tree, but he made a pretty critical mistake, really. He ended up merging some. Uh, he merged the merge conflict in and everything. It was just a nightmare of old code. He didn't know how to rebase it or anything like that. Not many people do in the most industry, but sorry, I'm getting a bit sidetracked there on the whole Git world, but yeah, yeah, nice, nice. Send me your GitHubs. Yeah, going back to the topic at hand though, CI/CD. So I've spoken about TDD. I've spoken about Microsoft. So next on my agenda, the DevOps Handbook. I don't know if many of you have read it or read any of the Phoenix Project kind of like things. Quite a bit of a fan of their books. Just give it time for a comment. No, no. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. No, well, the DevOps handbook, it's all about CI/CD and how we deliver things, and you know, making sure that there's real world scenarios where uh, people have actually tried to improve their company in some way. So they do a lot of business process reengineering, where they look at how they're delivering stuff. So from a manufacturing point of view, if everything was all about time to production, so how long does it take from code, the inception of code, to the point that it gets to production? How do we speed up that process? There was actually a study that was done as well on people who push the CI, knowing their code's crap, right, regularly, actually deliver more content than those who push less regularly. Because when the people who push infrequently to the CI systems, yeah, fail fast. Yeah, exactly. It's a great concept. Fail fast, fail hard. Exactly. Just pushing it to CI continuously and letting the CI do the work, letting it run the linting tool to go over the code and check the syntaxes and things, letting it run the hey, I forgot about those things. Letting it run the linting tool, letting it run the unit tests, the integration tests, the end-to-end, if you can run it on the branch or whichever. Depends how long these tests take. Usually people decide where they want to run things. But the thing about the Phoenix project is they were trying to increase the speed to production. So to do it, they had to find a way that would make it work. And a lot of the time, they were looking at things where they build a load of different wheels for a car. One team would build a load of wheels, one team would build a load of brackets, one team would build a load of engines, one team would build all these different things. But what would happen is by the time they manufactured the car would be no longer something they want to design. And all those parts that they built, right, were waste material. And it cost these companies millions, millions of money, because these cars they were building would no longer be something that they would support. So they actually learned through trial and error that if they changed the process so that we had all the teams bundling together in little mini squads, and they build the car in sequential processes, they actually got to production faster, and they had less waste material, right? And everything they were producing was making money. I think that's one of the biggest things to take away is how do we continue to do that in CI/CD? And the reality is you can do that by looking at your deployment mechanisms and looking at whether you want to do something like so. There are many ways to deploy your app. Sometimes you can. Oh yeah, A/B testing is good. So you can deploy specifically to one group of people your changes, and another change to another group of people, or they don't get it, and only one group gets it, and then that group that gets it, if they report any problems, okay, swap the code back to the other one, because they got all these nodes up in the load balancer, and they just slowly change the nodes out, or some people are connected to certain parts, or sometimes they have these like configs that can just switch the code almost instantly as soon as the person refreshes, or they have WebSockets that, or well, maybe not WebSocket, actually, it's probably not applicable from what I've heard. Yeah, yeah, they don't often want to go with that though. Corporate overlords never do, because it's expensive, and it can seem costly, but it's convincing them that they're going to be making money in the long run. That's the main part, and they can only make money if they invest it. And tech is the future. If they don't invest in tech, they're not going to do well as a company. But they also have to invest in the right infrastructure that's well thought out. So with tests, having all these gateways, all these possible places where it could fail is great, because it helps to enable developers to develop more content. We can hire more developers to do more tests, and having developers help write tests is great. One of these mindsets that I really like and I've worked with before is this concept of moving right to left. Have you all heard of Jira? If you're working Jira, or are you Monday.com, or yeah, sis? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, well, Tristan knows. Okay, that's great. Yeah, Josh. Okay. Oh, great. So most people, yeah, everyone knows Jira. That's good. Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. Don't spend all your life in Jira. Um, so they've got things like Kanban boards. I mean, a lot of these have got this sort of process of moving a ticket from one status to another, and it sort of emulates that whole time to production. Like, when is something actually in production? And we once had this system whereby when we released a prod, a ticket had 50 days, and it'd sit in that column on the board. And if anything went wrong in those 50 days, it went back, and it was redeveloped on. But if nothing went wrong for 50 days, then it was done, right? But we'd monitor that particular change, and we'd monitor in production using things like logs, things that we're probably not allowed to use anymore because of GDPR. Yeah, Confluence is kind of a waste of time after time, because you write all this documentation, no one bloody reads it. I mean, I've written thousands of articles in Confluence, and it's the truth. Nobody reads it. Nobody. But I wish they did, because I wrote a really good article about how to raise a bug. That was one of my favorites. It was kind of taking the piss a little bit because I wanted to keep people entertained. It was to do with I'll share it at the end. You can have a good giggle to yourselves. I made it Baby Bear. I called it, like, like the three bears, Goldilocks and all that. I thought it'd be dead funny because it was a fairy tale, and we're working with a bunch of developers who are like so bored of hearing, how do I raise a bug? I don't want to learn about this. This is the most annoying thing known to man. But it matters, because if you don't raise it in the right way, how can the developers work on it? When you say it's broken, I mean, what's broken? How is it broken? Who could do this? Right? Like, those are genuine questions. Or having like too much information on the ticket, or not raising enough information on the ticket, or you need a balance, and having some kind of template that works and a reason behind it's good. Yeah, exactly. Unable to reproduce, go back. Yeah, exactly. Which is exactly what you get. And I used to get that all the time. Unable to reproduce. And 90% of the time I could reproduce it, because I talked to the person who raised it. And they go, "Oh, it's broken." And I go, "Well, why is it broken? What's broke? What did you do? What did you do?" "Oh, I did this, and I did this, and I did that, and I coughed into the wind, and the stars aligned, and it's broken." But that was more information than we needed, really. Explain it to me like a 3-year-old. Exactly. I love that. I love that, because I hate it when people assume that I know stuff. I'd rather someone just tell me that I don't. Tell me as if I'm a 3-year-old, basically, because it's you might think you know something, and then someone tells you otherwise that you don't. So going back to testing, time to production, we've done that. One of the styles I quite liked was, if your company is in a different state. So, like, let's say you are a small company. Jon Snow, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah, you know nothing, Jon Snow. I love that impression. But one of the things I quite like about big companies and small companies is they're at different stages. So you can have a greenfield project that's a new project. You can have an application support project that's been going on for a while. And if you're in app support and you don't have any tests, the best way to start writing them is to have a reactive approach. And what I mean by that is, write a test for something that a user's complained about. Don't write any to do with anything else, just the ones the users complain about, and keep releasing. And every time a user complains, write a test to cover it. And then eventually you'll have coverage that's meaningful. Because coverage is great. You can have 90% coverage, but if all that covers something that users don't actually use, what does it matter? You know, at the end of the day, you want to be testing the things that the users use. But to know when the user's using it, you need to be using logging, you need to be tracking it. You need people who are going to follow these journeys, figure out what journeys they go on, because every user goes a different journey and they use the app in a different way. Like some might press the cross in the corner, someone might go, oh, if I swipe left or I swipe this way. And there's so many ways it can go wrong. But the truth is, you find the most common ones first, and then you can be proactive once you've been reactive enough and go and actually do it. Yeah, exactly. It is more it is more efficient and cost effective to be a reactive. It's a right reactive testing. And it's one of my favorite ways to approach it. Whenever I go to an interview and I say that, people immediately look at me like, why would you want to write reactive tests? Why wouldn't you want to be proactive? Until I explain the point that if you're in application support, it makes sense. Whereas if you're in a greenfield world, there aren't tests yet. There is barely any code yet. So we could write tests as we go. Tests on demand, exactly. I really like that point, Peter, because that's exactly what I was trying to drive. And it's testing as a service. Yeah, that'd be a good one. I could contract myself to do that. But the problem is, users don't often speak up when they're upset about something because it's a waste of their time. They've got better things to be doing. So how do we find out when there's a problem? But they're not telling us. We have to use some form of logging. And the reality is, in the modern day today, we've got things like GDPR, the data protection laws, that prevent us from knowing the user's name or anything that's identifiable. But we do need to know that user is that user without knowing the name and all these things. And there are tools out there that we can sort of do, and I can't remember what it was called now. I lost it. It was in my head a second ago, but I genuinely can't remember. I was chatting with Dan about it earlier, and it was like, we should totally get this. It's dead good. But I used to use things like Kibana, but it wasn't. But you get so much information about the user, like you get the date and time stamp of things happening, so you could trace through it. It was about and a trace. They've contacted me a few times. It was like it wasn't Sentry. It was another one that was similar to Sentry. But it was good. I liked it. I really liked it because it kept things private, which meant that we weren't breaching GDPR, and that kept the company compliant. The problem is, half the time, the compliance team or the security team make it really hard to develop code because they put so many of these things in our way to stop us from writing code. But the whole point of a company that writes code, they need to be able to push code out. So if you've got a security team that disables you so hard, that isn't available to enable you to do your job, it is disabling. Not Datadog, sadly. Anyone who guesses this right can have a JetBrains one. It's just that's how I'm going to decide. No, yeah, a license. Oh God, I genuinely can't think of what it was called, but we were talking about it the other day. Either way, some form of logging that keeps things anonymous, because then we'd know when users are having problems. Not Logstash either. I've used that one in conjunction with Kibana, which is good. Logstash is quite good. But it was like I don't know why I want to keep saying Roblox, but it's not. It's like it's stuck in my head, but it's not. It's not. It's sure I googled it. Minecraft, yeah, Roblox, booyah! You got it, yeah. Josh, you've earned one Roblox. That's it. That's the one. It started with an R. Oh, thank God! I thought I was never going to get that one out. But there we go. Psych. Okay, fair play. I'll have to figure it. Oh, Josh doesn't even code. Wow, that's harsh. That's harsh. Everyone's a coder inside. That's how I feel in my job at the minute. I just manage people. Yeah, when you get to a point where you stop writing code and you just manage people. Yeah, and then when you do write code, you're like, oh, how do I do this again? You have to be in it for a week, and then you go, oh, right, it's like ducks of water. That's the one thing I like. Ducks. I was just thinking of duck typing in JavaScript I quite like, and that's one of the things that's worth talking about in testing world is type systems really do help sort of prevent bugs down the line. What I don't know if many of you are JavaScript devs or whether you come from a more object-oriented background, but if you are a JavaScript dev or a TypeScript dev, then typically you'll know all about you know, this is something of undefined, you know, like because you tried to access a key on an object that the object didn't exist because the object was undefined. But you're like, why is it undefined? It's probably because I haven't awaited for it or something, or we haven't caught the promise or anything somewhere along the lines, and you get into a bit of a problem. And having some kind of type safety is quite nice. You know, like TypeScript does give you that benefit of that extension of its language to. I never liked it at first, but with time, it's grown on me. And I know there's other ways that we could potentially go from TypeScript, but it does help us, you know, reduce the number of bugs by following a good practice. I mean, I'm not saying I want to be an object-oriented programmer because I think it takes forever to develop something. Yeah, exactly. Now I can't code with that exactly, because now when I do JavaScript normally, I'm like, what's wrong with it? Because TypeScript has that ability to just define what object comes back. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like asking your mum to, Peter, you've got one. You've got a license. Forcing vegetables down you. Yeah, nobody wants to eat vegetables. It's horrible. No, I like vegetables now. But I never did when I was a kid. JSDoc, yeah, no, that is the other alternative. I think I was following someone on YouTube actually, who, you know, I'm actually more of a fan sometimes of JSDoc over it, because it does have an extension of you could, when you're looking at the IntelliSense, you can see all of the what the properties are inside it and what it's trying to do. I think having readable code is also very important because that helps us build on better code. But one of the points of the title today as well that I was trying to talk about was effectively, what is it that, oh wait, what was the title again? I think I remember, what was it? I'm gonna have a look. Why writing tests is valuable and the benefit of good CI/CD practices. Yeah, yes. So refactoring. Oh my goodness, that's another reason you should have tests, because if you already have tests, when you do a refactor, you know if you've broken something. Because half the time, most of the problems I've ever encountered, this is like when I once did some work for my dad. My dad's a geologist, but he built some code that, yeah, it basically is. He built some code that was really crap because a load of geologists wrote it. And they basically just copy pasted code everywhere, and there's tons of mathematical equations. And he said, "Oh, it takes 16 hours to run my Visual Basic code." And I was like, "Oh, 16 hours? Surely that can't be right. It can't be that complicated." And he's going, "Oh, the maths are it's just so complicated, son." And I was like, "Okay, well, let me have a look at it. Let's see if we can make it a bit faster." I looked at it and thought, this is just copy and pasted multiple times. Why is this in so many different loops? What's going on here? Who wrote this? A 2-year-old? I just kept coming out with insults. I went to refactor it and I broke it. And I was like, shit. And he went, the maths doesn't work anymore, son. It's not right. I was like, bollocks. And I refactored it again, broke it again. And it's like, you break it in a way that you don't know how to fix it because you don't understand the maths. And that was the problem. Didn't understand the maths, so I didn't know when it was going to be broken. So every time he said, this is why it's broken, I wrote a test. I kept writing tests in VBA. I know it was really bad. Well, it's a dead language practically now. But I wrote them because his code was so mathematical that I didn't understand it because I don't really know maths to that level. But eventually, I refactored it with no issues because these tests were in place. It is a dead language, yeah, in 2024. He still uses it though. But he does it to make reports in Excel. But yeah, makes a lot of money doing it. Yeah, that's the magic of tests. Someone else can write these tests for you. Let me read that a bit deeper. Yeah, they just need to be there to save your butt. Exactly. Saving your butt. That's what it's all about. People see tests as an obstacle, as something that, gets in your way and it's a pain in the backside. I know this because when I used to work for a previous company, every time a test would fail, they'd comment it out because they didn't know how it worked. They didn't want to know how it worked. And they were like, and the boss would say, get it in now, get it in yesterday. And what he should have turned around and said to the boss is, listen, I need more time. I need more time. Or get it in, fix the test after. Fix the test. Because what if it happens again? You want to make sure you catch that. You want to make sure that never happens again. So writing a test, having a test in place, it's a regression suite. It will never regress if the test exists and it'll never regress if the test exists and you don't comment the test out to make it go through the pipeline to production. I mean, we had guys who would just release directly to production and circumvent the CI entirely. So we had to write some rules in to make it stop them doing that. But yeah, ChatGPT. So the modern way is using AI. Yeah, that's a very good point. I have a question to you as well. Will the rise of AI, how much will it relying on it? Yeah, I actually use ChatGPT at the minute in my testing, but it's very minimal when I do use it because the trouble with ChatGPT is it's a great tool for coding in general. There's a tool they've got called Copilot. Highly recommend giving it a go. I mean, at first I was very, what if it replaces me? How good can it be? If it's that good, do I really need to know how to be a programmer? Yes, you do need to know how to be a programmer because most of the time it writes shit code. You have to teach it to write good code because it learns how you write code and eventually it starts getting good at predicting what you're going to do next. But it speeds up your development big time. Like the speed you can program at with ChatGPT on your side is a lot faster, but I still think it's far away that they would replace us entirely. That being said, actually, that's a lie. So the semi-lie, because I did see recently an AI that actually builds automated tests by looking at your entire code base for this guy who sells it. Too expensive for most companies. It writes end-to-end tests. It would replace me entirely in my role. And I'm going to say replace. I mean, it would help amplify me in my role because then I figure out what other kind of tests can I write. Can I write smoke tests? For example, if you deploy to production, how do you know that the deployment went well? Because for all you know, the infrastructure could have failed. So you might want to run some kind of tests. Now, it's all about lighting a fire somewhere to find out where the problem is and the smoke comes up and so everyone can see it. Now, my boss doesn't agree with me on it, on how smoke tests work. We regularly have that argument. But I always believed that if you're running a test in production, it should be non-intrusive. It shouldn't create data and it shouldn't cause performance degradation in production. It should just simply check, is the environment up? Is it working? It's a tire kicking exercise. So you might log in, check that some screens load. That's about it, really. So just catch up with what's going on in the chat. Yeah, I lost my programming job recently to ChatGPT. No way! Who's relying on it now? ChatGPT writes shit code to a degree. Like I've got product managers who use ChatGPT to write test specs, and half the time it writes code in there that doesn't make any bloody sense. It's better to just use words. I mean, that being said, and not you, Tristan, but there are product managers out there. No, but yeah, no. ChatGPT is a great tool at the minute. I mean, maybe it will one day replace us in some way. The only way that's going to happen is if they connect all the different AIs together. Speech, because there's multiple different AIs, isn't there? There's like computer vision, being able to tag cars and read the number plates and things. That would make the computer see, then you've got the whole speech thing, what Alexas do and what Google does, being able to recognize and speech. And then you've got the whole natural language GUI that ChatGPT and Bard, well, not Bard anymore, they call it something else, what the Google built. Whatever they've built, it just comes back in perfect English. And eventually, if you put enough of them together, you get a super intelligence. That's when you need to shit the bed, because that thing will replace everyone on planet Earth. But I'm a sci-fi nerd, so I love that stuff. That's when the apocalypse occurs, because that's what they call the they have a name for it. If anyone could come up with a name for what it's called when an AI becomes sentient and aware and super powerfully intelligent beyond our means, and we don't understand, and we can no longer. Oh, profitable. I was looking for something like, they call it this. Yeah, there you go. You've just earned yourself a JetBrains one, the singularity, because we don't know what comes after that point. Right? Because after that point, it becomes so intelligent that we genuinely don't know. It's smarter than us. We don't know what it's thinking, and and it could simulate billions and billions of combinations. That's why I like personal interest. But yeah, nothing comes after that point. Well, that's what they think scientifically, but scientific theories are constantly being disapproved every single day by another scientific theory, like the whole concept of faster than light travel. People theorize that you can't go faster than light, things like that. It's constantly being disproved. But that's the fun bit, because if we knew everything, it'd be boring. I love it. I absolutely love sci-fi. But yeah, I think I've talked your ears off to death. So if you have any questions you want to hit me with, or I really, yeah, I think I've gone a bit nuts. Yeah. So
Yeah, I know that was great.
yeah,
But yeah, we can still take questions. If anyone's keen,
yeah.
feel free to raise your hands, unmute.
Oh, brilliant! I want to give one to. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name. I am genuinely going to butcher your name. Ewald?
You can't give to Ewald. He's also an organizer.
Ah,
He's just here to
such a
cause
contributor.
nonsense.
Ah, I got it. I wanted to go on to Peter then. AGI, artificial, greater intelligence. Oh, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, great stuff. Peter needs one, I think, because Pete, yeah. Looking around the company, sounds like an amazing place to work. Yeah, it does. Which company? Oh, the one I work at currently. Yeah, I mean it's yeah. Wait, you think you should submit a talk to DevConf next year? I mean, I definitely can. I definitely can. I didn't. Yeah, it'd be a bit of a laugh. I think. I'm looking to do a bit of traveling and try and talk more. I think. But try and learn more. To be honest, as well. I'm looking to understand a bit. Yeah. I will. Well, I'll give it a good go. I'm enabled now. I can do these things. Yeah, before AI ruins the world. Yeah, before it crashes me plane. There is actually scenarios where AI could actually it could like us, but most of the time, every scenario is that it's going to hate us. Uh, yeah, um, yeah. Testing claims your prize. Yeah, okay. Go talk on TS or type systems general. Yeah, that'd be good. That would be good. I could do that. I mean, type systems are great. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for the opportunity. It was really good. Yeah.
It was epic to have you, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. I hope it wasn't too boring or anything. I managed to keep you entertained.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was really great. It
Yeah.
was also it's really refreshing having it be more interactive like this. It was really
Yeah.
great to
Yeah.
be able to talk to you directly and
Yeah.
have some good chats.
Yeah. I don't like it when it's not interactive. It gets boring after a while.
Yeah.
I hate sitting in a meeting where you just you sleep off. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
hey,
Cool.
yeah.
So you picked Peter and Leonie, right?
Yep,
think
yeah, defo. How many more people have I got to give to?
you've got one more prize.
Oh, guys, we're gonna have to do a rock, paper, scissors, I think, between let's say Tristan and Faith. Go on. So if I on the count of three, I want you guys to type whether it's rock, paper, or scissors, right? And on when I say go, you release whatever option you've picked. So on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, go. Hey, scissors, Tristan, you win. It's yours, yeah.
Oh, please email admin@developerug.org.za. You can make the subject Owen's testing. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll just repost that email address. Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks,
No
Owen.
worries. You're
If
most
anyone
welcome.
still has
Thank you, Owen.
any
Thank you,
questions,
everyone.
Yeah.
cool. But otherwise, have a good evening.
Have a great evening. Thanks, guys. Stay in touch. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.